So I know it's a bit of a teaser to put that up so early in the morning when we haven't even finished Destination Q 2025, but we want you to be excited that it's not just about today, it's about the next 12 months and it's about the next many years through to 2032 and beyond. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please allow me to introduce a couple of my colleagues who have joined me here today, who are about to take part in a panel. My colleagues from the Tourism Cabinet Committee. And colleagues, as I mention your name, please come and join me up here on the stage. Established by the Christopher government in our first 100 days of government, the Tourism Cabinet Committee has been instrumental in driving the 20-year tourism plan forward, representing portfolios that are critically important to the growth of tourism in Queensland. Firstly, the man that is going to be singly held responsible for the success or otherwise of the Olympic and Paralympic Games, my good friend Tim Mander, who, as I'm sure you can imagine, has a lot on his plate. And if you grab him later on, he's also happy to tell you about his successful NRL refereeing career. Next is another good friend, the Minister for Local Government and Disaster Recovery, Anne Ley, who is instrumental in ensuring our efforts support councils, especially when it comes to regions that are hard hit by severe weather events. And I do want to acknowledge the many in the room that come from local government. You are our key partners in many places around the state when it comes to tourism. Please welcome Anne Ley. Dale Last is the Minister for Natural Resources as well as Rural and Regional Development. Queensland's 5 times the size of Japan and beholden to incredible natural wonders, and it's Minister's last job to help us navigate how we get access to those. And that includes our Great Barrier Reef Islands, including Double Island. So please come on up, Dale Last. Not on the panel this morning, but joining you in a little while is the Deputy Premier, who is also the Minister responsibility for State Development, Infrastructure, Planning and Industrial Relations. So a little bit later on, you'll get to hear from him. And I do tender the apologies today of our very steadfast member of the team, Brent Mickelberg, who is Minister for Transport and Main Roads, and he helps ensure that we get the connectivity across Queensland. Together, the 6 of us form the Tourism Cabinet Committee, a new age of government collaboration designed to remove the roadblocks that previously prevented tourism projects from taking flight. And we've hit the ground running, colleagues, haven't we? Without further ado, I'm now going to hand over to the moderator of the panel, Chris Jones. Thank you very much, Chris.
Minister, thank you very much for your continued leadership across tourism, environment, science and innovation as you take your seat there. Our tourism industry has long called for more coordinated cross-government collaboration, and this Cabinet Committee is a direct response to that. As the Minister just said this morning, to guide this important discussion, Chris Jones, editor of the Courier Mail and the editorial lead for all of News Corp Australia's Queensland mastheads. He is a passionate advocate for the power of regional voices and the impact of community. With a team of nearly 200 reporters across the state, his mission is to use the platform of journalism to drive change in the places that Queenslanders live, work and travel. Please join me in welcoming Chris Jones to the stage to moderate today's Tourism Cabinet Committee panel discussion.
My first thanks is to whoever chose that headshot. That was the first photo taken in colour in Australia, so that's how old that one is, but appreciate that. Hey, welcome. The vibe in the room is amazing. The great thing about the tourism industry is how up and about you guys always are. I really encourage you to find this little bit of paper on your table and to scan that QR code, and where it's your opportunity to ask these guys questions. It's your industry, and this is your opportunity, so please take advantage of that. Ministers, thank you for joining us today, for taking the time. The Courier Mail and our mastheads right across the state are huge advocates of the tourism industry, and so it's a pleasure for me to be here as well. Minister Powell, I might just start with you. When we did the launch of the 2045 plan, however long ago that was, May, I think, June, the thing that really stuck with me was your promise to get rid of all of the tape and streamline the approval processes. Whatever that is, 5 months on. How's that going? And you're talking to the people who are dealing with it, so no political spin, please. Just tell it straight.
It's going really well, Chris. Cabinet colleagues agree, there'll be a piece of legislation tabled in the House next week. So the commitment we gave you was that within Department of Environment, Tourism, Science and Innovation, we'd scrap this idea that you need multiple pieces of permitting. Well, you'll have one. And the legislation that will empower that will hopefully be introduced next week. So as per the commitment, we're delivering.
So just talk through how that's going to happen. If I want to do a new thing,
I'll get them to tell
the previous regime, I imagine, was challenging because it did come up in the, it came up in the process of developing that plan. Obviously, you've made a priority. But what is it for these guys when they're going after something? What is it that? How's that going to change? What are they going to do? What's the requirements? Is there still a bunch of requirements but one process? Like, how's that going to work?
Yeah, I think it's probably the best way to explain it is to use a tangible example. So the one I think we used last June was around a whale watching operation in Hervey Bay. So at the moment, they need a tourism permit, they need an access to the marine park permit, and they need an access to Gari Fraser Island. So 3 different permits from the one department to do anything. And each time we ask for the same information about the operation, we ask for the same information about the people that are responsible for it, we ask for information about who's going to be accessing it, how many times. Now they only have to apply once, and we'll give 1 permit for the 3 actions.
Fantastic. Well, I don't know, it didn't generate a spontaneous applause, but I'm sure that that's coming.
Just know it's the first step.
Cabinet first.
We've got to get through Cabinet first. Look, ultimately, we also want to look at things like your workplace health and safety permits, your liquor licensing, and all of those as well. But first step first, we'll get our own act sorted within DETSI, and then we'll go and work with our colleagues around some of the others.
Now, working with the industry is obviously, streamlining investment approvals, all that sort of stuff. One thing that was in the plan was this concept that we're going to need 40,000 extra hotel rooms by 2045. Now, I'm no expert, but if you do the maths, that's something like, if there's 200 rooms in each hotel, 200 hotels, and journalist maths tells me that's 1 a month for the next 20 years. At our Future Brisbane event about a month ago, I had the Premier on stage and I asked him, what are you doing? And it was essentially variations of we're open for business, which is great, but that doesn't help someone get a loan from a bank or get a proposal to stack up. How are you going to actually get this done? And forget about 2045. Minister Manda, we have a Games in 2032 in the Greater Brisbane region that's going to require a heck of a lot more hotel rooms. What's actually going to start to happen?
Well, I'm not going to shy away from what the Premier said. We are open for business, and Infinity Planet is one of the sponsors. They're making an announcement today about a project, funnily enough, in my own electorate, that potentially will see 700 beds delivered.
Is that real?
Well, they're here today. You go and ask them, Chris. It was in your masthead today too.
Oh,
so I assumed if it's in the Courier Mail, it's real, isn't it?
It looks too good to be true.
If you read it in the Courier Mail, it's true. No, it's there. So people are coming to the state. A couple of things we are doing. We're driving down the costs to actually construct these hotels. We're not shying away from the fact that we've done away with BPIC, we've done away with the CFMEU's influence over the cost of construction. That will mean that when the operator, the company, goes to the bank for a loan, they don't have to ask for as much because the costs of construction are going down. I know the Deputy Premier is working with local governments around the state around planning reform that can then free up approval times, and approval times cost money. So again, that's a saving that doesn't have to go to the bank about. We're talking to our colleagues in QIC and QTC around what the government can do in terms of support, not necessarily handing over a cheque, but handing over an agreement as to how they pay some taxes. So all of those things are on the table, and it's working, Chris. We're starting to see people come forward to deliver them.
Terrific. I might go to you, Minister Lay. Obviously, local government has a big role to play, and we'll come to that. But the first question from me is it related to what one of Robbie's slides there, which was the minus 16% visitation, international visitors to country Queensland. You represent the most country electorate, I think, in Queensland, it'd be safe to say. What's your perspective on getting more people out into the outback to experience it through tourism?
Look, one of the things that our councils do really well is working with our local tourism industries to try and make sure that we have that product that is quite unique. You will see things out in regional Queensland. You know, you talk about Richmond, places like Eromanga. where you actually have the dinosaurs and the museums out there, and it's absolutely unique. One of the things that we have to make sure we do, and we know we are the most disaster-prone state, is making sure that when we do have those disasters, we can get those businesses and get access to those businesses. So we're investing, it's over $500 million in disaster resilience. Now we're actually investing in betterment, which will be things like making sure bridges like Olera Creek, that they don't go out when we have those significant disasters. And we can actually get people back into those areas after those disasters occur. And it happens right across regional Queensland.
And that's obviously very important for the local councils as well, right? So maybe expand on how you're working with local governments to respond quickly to the issues as they're raised.
Look, some of the things we've done is making sure that for local councils prior to disasters, we have pre-approvals in place for their disaster assistance. So they can get out there, they can clean up the trees, they can do those sorts of things on the ground. So businesses need to be open. Businesses need to have foot traffic coming through because that's critically important to their cash flow. But also making sure that we can look at some pre-approvals for that disaster assistance because they'll have periods when they've been closed. That impacts your cash flow and it impacts your employees as well because a lot of backpackers, you find a pub in Western Queensland, you'll find backpackers because we're short of staff out in the regions, but those people need to be able to get to work and be at work to be paid. So that's really important for the local economies as well.
Minister, last, I am told that you are gagging to talk about Great Barrier Reef Islands.
Well, Chris, for someone who's on a couple of $1 million package, I've got a couple for sale. So if you'd like to put your name to
They're
one,
not a good investment. They're not a good investment, I'm told.
So we administer 25 islands in Queensland. There's 29 resorts, 19 of those operational. Of course, Double Island up at off Palm Cove, and it's nice to see Bree here today. Excited to announce today that we're about to enter detailed negotiations with the preferred proponent next week. So that's now moving ahead. We point out to an EOI, and we've identified a preferred proponent and moving ahead now with that lease negotiations, and some exciting news will be forthcoming before the end of the year. So that's our goal, is to get these islands back up and operational, and we're working our way along the coastline, and certainly they are the jewel in the crown. When you have a look at the islands and the resorts that are on our islands, it's such an attraction for Queensland and for our visitors, both domestically and internationally.
And they should be, right? They should be a fantastic investment. We've had this period where, for whatever myriad reasons, I'm sure, it's been otherwise, but surely coming to Queensland leading up to 2032 and on to 2045, making the most of our islands has got to be critical, like central to our tourism offering, yeah?
Oh, look, absolutely. And they're all unique in their own way. They offer different attractions, and they certainly are an added benefit when you talk about DestinationQ going forward and what Queensland has to offer. And you visit these islands and you certainly appreciate just how fantastic they are. And so we're working pretty hard to make sure that we bring all these islands online, get them back operational. There's a fair bit of work, as you'd appreciate, but we've got a great team that's now working on that particular strategy.
Minister Manda, when you reflect on the great job you've been doing in your career, which rugby league game do you think was the best one that you refereed?
Oh, we haven't got time for that, Chris. I'll be here all day, mate. But I will take credit for the grand final that we won this year, and both in the AFL and rugby league. It's amazing what I've achieved in the first 12 months. So.
Yeah, applause for that. Thank you. Legacy from the 2032 games. This is really central to my heart. Look, it's going to be a great party for 2 weeks and 2 weeks in 2032 with the Olympic and then Paralympic Games. But we need to make the most of this once in a forever opportunity for the greater Brisbane region, from Sunshine Coast, Brisbane, Gold Coast, Toowoomba, and all the other regional centres. When you think about not so much the games themselves, but the legacy, how much of your time is spent thinking about legacy, and how's the government going about it? How are you driving those decisions through Cabinet?
It's the forefront of our mind in every decision that we make, Chris. You're right. we're going to get tremendous advantage in the next 7 years leading up to the games. You can feel the buzz already from a sporting perspective, well, not just a sporting perspective, from, Brisbane will be known in the world as one of only 25 cities to host the games, and that's a big deal. But it doesn't mean a lot if we don't have something afterwards, and we've learnt some lessons from other cities. I mean, as successful as Sydney was, they will say themselves that they never really took advantage from a legacy point of view, not just the sporting infrastructure, but the transport infrastructure, the tourism awareness that we'll have, the inclusiveness and accessibility for people with a disability. I reckon that's a big deal as well. Sports innovation and technology, not just sport, security, you name it. We are going to get those benefits over the next 7 years, and it's our job to make sure that continues beyond that as well, and we've got a lasting impact.
Now, you spoke about accessibility, and just before we get to the first question from the floor, I would just point out that if you're building a stadium at Victoria Park, and great decision, you probably don't want people in wheelchairs to have to wheel their way all the way down to the RNA to get on the train. You might want to think about that. The first question from the floor is from Tass Weber from Beta, who asks Minister Mander, lucky guy, how are you going to engage industry and supply chains to ensure that we're ready for 2032?
Well, Taz, that has started. Some of you may have been involved in a lunch a couple of weeks ago where we started talking about procurement and talking about how especially small and medium-sized businesses can be involved in the supply chain for services as well as goods. We've put out 50 expressions of interest. The whole idea of this at this stage is to give industry an idea of what is required. It's beyond my comprehension until I've come into this role, just to realise how big this is. I mean, we have the world, we have 10,500 athletes coming here, we have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of tourists, the ecosystem that has to be developed to host all those people, everything, we'll need fencing, the same distance as it is from the Sunshine Coast to the Gold Coast. Interestingly, Chris, from my background, we need 9,500 whistles. Don't know why. Just you name it. And what we want to be able to do...
Is that a real stat?
That's a real stat from Paris.
9,500 whistles.
From Paris, 9,500 whistles. So, and what we want to be able to do is replicate what Paris did. 80% of the goods and services were provided genuinely by small and medium-sized businesses from France itself. So that's sort of now our model for success. And I believe that we can do it. We've got some great people in that area. We are visiting the state. So what we did here in Brisbane, we are now visiting regional areas as well to give them an understanding of how they can be involved in supplying these goods and services.
Great. Maybe back to you, Mr. Powell, thinking about major events. An observation first is I wonder how many pints of Guinness the boomers going to the military tattoo are going to knock over around the streets of Suncorp, but that'll be fun. But major events are obviously a huge part of getting people here. I think those stats about how a rugby union game in Brisbane delivered for the entire state, I think is a really, really worth reinforcing. What's your view around when you look at all of Queensland in making sure that you're attracting the right events to the right places so that the whole state can benefit, just like that with the Lions?
Yeah, it's a great question. The benefit of the Lions was it wasn't just that Wallabies versus Lions game. It was the fact that they were here several weeks prior for the the Reds versus the Lions games. And so they'd come, they'd spent time here, they used the time in between to go elsewhere around the state, or they went and caught a game interstate and then came back. And one of the things that all of us are working on and all of our DGs are working on, along with Tony Cochrane, who is the special envoy that the Premier's put in place around events, is ensuring we attract more events like that. Robbie was mentioning NRL Magic Round, best weekend for Brisbane without a doubt. Huge Kiwi influx.
Schoolies for middle-aged men.
That's
the
well,
greatest
what
weekend ever.
Yeah. Righto. But I know, I'm going to leave that one alone. I know our friends in Beta also love the fact that they're calling May now Magic May, because it's not just Magic Round, it's the truck show, which fills up the hotel rooms during the week. It's music events. I'm trying to remember who it was. Dua Lipa, was also here during that month. So what we're trying to do is have a calendar of events, not just here in Brisbane, but across the board. And some of that is actually acknowledging what other regions' strengths are. So Gold Coast, you again, a sporting mecca in terms of the marathon and the Gold Coast 500. Townsville, another supercar event, but opportunities to maybe take a country music festival into Townsville. So we're looking at all of those and making sure that it's not just a sugar hit one weekend a year, that we have a pipeline across months so that the benefit, the hotel rooms are full, the restaurants are full, the cafes are full, and locals are getting employment as a result.
In a pipeline, and I suppose also events that support each other, that make sense in the context of the big event around it. Got a question from Kushla from the Tillman Group, basically regarding the eyes of the world will soon be on our natural environment, which will actually be the huge selling point of 2032. You know, people often say, wow, look at those old buildings in Paris. Like, well, wait till you come here and see our natural environment. But the question relates to, is the government researching global best practice in terms of regeneration as you go about this nature-based tourism stuff as well, so you get the balance?
Yeah, look, it's a great question, and this is the first time in Queensland that the environment and tourism portfolios have been put together. And the Premier did it deliberately because he wants to drive ecotourism in the state. We've got natural landscapes that can put Tasmania and New Zealand to shame. We just don't know how to market them or prepare them and then market them in an appropriate way. And let me just be categorically clear. We're talking about light touch ecotourism products. You do not get the benefit. The tourists don't want to come if you don't take care of the environment you're putting these products into. And classic example is the Naro track. 2 nights, 3 days on Whitsunday Island. I was talking to Nick Dowling from Hamilton Island last night. You would know that literally you can almost see it from Hamilton Island itself, but you feel like you're in this most remote part of Australia on your own island with some of the most spectacular views ever. And you can now do a guided 2-night, 3-day trek through that island. Fantastic. First of our 45 by 45, and that's exactly what we want to do. So everyone needs to know, we know that to do this, we've got to respect the environment, because that's the only way you get the tourists there and the only way you make them conservation warriors for the future.
Minister last, regional development. Have you ever been on a farm stay? And tell us about the experience if you have.
Well, that's my background. I grew up on the land, and my family's still on the land, and of course I lived and worked in northwest Queensland up the Cape and those rural communities. Love getting out and about, and when you travel around this state you really start to appreciate just the variety that we have and our natural environment, the attraction that is in that space. And no wonder these international visitors in particular fall in love with Queensland, because when you travel around Queensland and you see what we have to offer, it is truly amazing. And on that, the question here about agri-tourism and farm stays, fantastic opportunities for people to get out there, to experience life on the land, to be exposed to it, and it's a growing industry and certainly something that I'm pretty passionate about.
Yeah, and you dunked my alley-oop, because I was referring back to that question relating to through Dallas from Destination Scenic Rim. You're talking about ecotourism, but Dallas suggests with the question there that it's tough from a red tape planning perspective for farmers to open their gates to offer authentic, affordable, family-friendly experiences. Oh, so I went to the wrong minister. So Minister Lay, could you answer for Minister Last on behalf of Minister Powell, Dallas's question?
Well, I'm not the Minister for Planning, but I do know that this is a significant issue for regional and rural communities. And the Scenic Rim, as Dallas has actually pointed out, it is something that can be very easily addressed. It is one of those pieces of red tape in planning schemes that we have talked with the Deputy Premier about. And if there are any councils there who want to change that that to make it easier for agritourism, we are open for business and we want to hear from you, because it is really important. Also too, from a regional perspective, it gets people back to the grassroots, back to agriculture, and that's really important that people know that and their children are able to have those valuable experiences.
Just on that, it was literally last week the Deputy Premier put out a new agri-tourism policy guideline to local councils. So to be blunt, if you're an agri-tourism operator, your councils now have no excuse to support you, and if they're not trying hard enough. We as a state have given them the guidance they need to support you, and we hope they take up that offering and get going.
I'd also make the comment for the room that don't underestimate what this Cabinet Committee can actually achieve, because we all come together, and I chair a resource committee and Andrew of course chairs this tourism cabinet committee, but when you have all the relevant ministers sitting around that table and these are the issues that we talk about, we're getting decisions made there and then, which would otherwise take weeks to make because governments are notorious for working in silos. Well, here you have all the decision makers along with their DGs sitting in one room discussing these issues, making decisions to make it happen.
Yeah, well, that's great, because as the paid cynic in the room, I saw that you guys had this cabinet subcommittee, and I assumed it was just so you could have meetings in lovely places across Queensland, but you're hard at work.
We
so
keep getting
great
offers to go take it around the state, but we've stuck to 1 William Street for now.
Oh, yeah. I think you should get out on the road and enjoy all Queensland has to offer. Minister Lay, I'm not sure who this question's from, but you mentioned how critical it is to get people back along our outback roads. One challenge is due to the resources on the ground, roads remain listed as closed. Oh yeah, I know this topic, yeah. So the RACQ road closure website often lists roads that are closed that have actually been opened. How can you clean up that process so that people aren't getting freaked out when actually they can get there, no problems at all?
It looks like that question might have come from my electorate by the look of it, because not only do we have challenges in relation to getting that information out there that roads are open, but we have two different systems in Queensland and New South Wales, which can make it really difficult for travellers who want to come from our southern states to our beautiful state of Queensland. Look, the information, it is actually a question that is in the portfolio of the Minister for Main Roads, who's unfortunately not here, but it is actually something that we need to do, and we do work very closely with our local governments, because we need to get out and make sure those roads, particularly the bridges after flood events, are safe for people to actually traverse over, because it's not just tourism, small traffic, it's heavy traffic that's coming through as well, and the last thing we want to see is somebody actually having an accident on one of those. So look, one of the things we want to do is, we know that social media puts lots and lots of things out there about the bad things that happen with disasters, but we need to make sure we get out there and tell people that our communities are open, that we get those roads open as quickly as possible. And that's why we work in a partnership with local government, because often the local councils are out there on the ground in far western or northern communities, and they can provide some of that assistance back to Transport and Main Roads to get things open quicker and faster.
I'm sure the Minister for Main Roads will be happy to join you at your next Cabinet subcommittee meeting at Qualia. Minister Mander, this question is from Stephanie, who asks, how is tourism taking advantage of the new era of AI? You are the ChatGPT master in the room, no doubt.
Oh, I don't know why I've got this one, but anyhow. Look, I don't know if I can talk with great insight about the effect on tourism. I can tell you how it's affecting sport, and we're using AI in a whole range of different ways. One of the great ways we're using it is in talent identification. So we've developed this app for people around Queensland, young people who can actually film themselves, do a series of tests. That goes to our QAS sports scientist. They use all the AI stuff, all that type of thing that happens in the background, and they can identify people's talent. So we had a guy in Proserpine who was a gymnast, a guy called Mac Rogers, did this testing, and he's now rowing for Australia. So that's one of the ways we're using AI in sport, and I'm sure that will flow over to tourism as well.
Yeah, it's amazing technology. We are close to our time, so I might come back to you, Minister Power, just to close it off. Feel free to make any closing remarks, but my last question to you is, and probably to all of you, but you can speak on behalf, is how freaked out are you that the Directors General are about to answer Ask Me Anything session, and are you going to throw a few questions up yourself from the audience?
If you see a question from Andrew on the panel, yes, that's me. No, not freaked out at all. Dale was talking about how we work closely together. We have the team's been basically together for 8 years, and when a gnarly problem comes up, we sit down, we resolve it, we get going. And the great thing is we've got a bunch of DGs that do exactly the same thing. Often they're coming to us with a solution, not presenting a problem, because they've already had the conversations and sorted it out. So I guess my parting message to everyone in the room, Chris, is that you've got a government who's got your back. A lot of the questions you've put up these are still presenting challenges to you as an industry. Please know we're working through them, and if we haven't got to them yet, we're going to get to them very, very soon.
Yeah, and look, the tourism industry is so important, and it's great that you, as a government, is giving it so much attention. 1 in 11 jobs, we heard, leading up to 2032, it's only going to get more and more critical. So thank you all for the focus that you're giving on it as part of your very busy lives. I mean, you don't have any choice, but the other three do, and it's great to see them focusing on it. And thank you also for being here today and for your time and for your candour. And please, Minister Mander at morning tea, you can relive the glory days of the 80s and 90s whenever you like, guys. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great day, everyone.